So mouse marketing and hardware info is kind of nuts. Polling rate, which should be reporting rate, more on that in a bit. DPI, sensor FPS in the tens of thousands, number go up so clearly it's better, right? Then you get a grip of people saying very definitively that, well, if you're hard stuck bronze, check this one mouse setting, or similar one-size-fits-none advice just for the clicks in the ad rev. Good news, I built a tool to find the perfect reporting rate setting for your mouse on your machine in each specific game you play, which might actually be different. Bad news, there's a spreadsheet, some math, and I'm likely going to have to bust out MS Paint in this video. Strap in. Some quick notes before we get started. There's chapters in the description if you want to skip this. I had this mostly done like a week after the aim training at 40 video, which if you haven't seen is up there. But then life happened, and at this point I just want the tool out there in the community so that we can make both the tool and the communal understanding of how mice stats actually impact us better. There are some definition of terms we need to cover real quick because I see grips of people, including myself, if I'm honest, getting this wrong before. I'm likely going to do this off the cuff, both because I don't need another barrier to getting this video out, but also because I want to explain it in terms that work instead of getting bogged down in verbiage. The core concepts will be accurate, but there might be specific details oversimplified, so just bear that in mind, okay? Okay, so first off, we need to talk polling and reporting rates. This might be, I feel like I'm playing Counter-Strike, might be easier here, might not. We'll find out. So polling, which most places are going to market at whatever that specific mouse runs, 2K, 4K, 1K, 8K, whatever, right? They say you want all the Ks so that your mouse is more responsive. And this is technically correct, which is the best kind of correct, but it's misunderstood by lots of people. Yes, I'm aware that there are specific things that the MCU on the mouse and the MCU in the dongle and the USB port and all of that do here. We're not talking about that. We're talking about getting a baseline layperson's understanding so that they can make more informed purchasing decisions, okay? So feel free to correct me down in the comments about how the mouse MCU actually does X, but come on. So, Cliff Notes version. This, your mouse dongle, is going to be polling, basically asking your mouse what it is doing at whatever hertz you set it to, whether that's 1K, 2K, 4K, 8K, whatever absurdity comes next, okay? So it is asking that many times a second. This, more specifically, the sensor and all of the fun software and hardware on the inside, well, firmware technically, not software, is looking at what this mouse is doing. And it is triggered by that movement. That can be influenced by things like DPI and CPI, which are actually the same thing, so I'm not sure why I just said both. However, in real-world terms, you're not going to see any significant benefit to running at 8 gajillion DPI and then downscaling with something like raw input or raw Excel. Raw Excel? Raw Excel. What this does is it will report up to the limits of the hardware and firmware, as well as the polling rate that you have set. So this is your reporting rate. So you move your mouse, it doesn't need all 8,000 of those polls to cover the entirety of your movement. It might only need like 2,347 or something, right? Because you didn't move your mouse enough for it to need the other, I don't feel like doing that math in my head, polls that second, okay? What? I got tired of looking at the poorly drawn paint. Maybe we'll try it again. It's just being able to paint and write with a mouse is a very specific skill. Okay, so just again, real quick. Polling rate is how often it asks for data. The reporting rate is how often your mouse sends data because it has data to send. So where this gets tricky is when you consider things like frame timing, the way your game and hardware and simulation of the specific game with their specific engine and how all of that fun stuff works on the back end. It's part of your total audio and graphics and input and simulation chain, but that's way too complicated for the scopes of this video, and I'm sure there are people who are smarter than me that have explained it more clearly. So for the sake of argument, right? Let's say this is 1 second. We have 1 second of time. And if you're at 1000 hertz, you're sampling every 1,000th of 1 second, right? So in this 1 second chunk of time, if you are polling at 1000 hertz, you're polling every 1 millisecond. So worst case scenario, your poll happens just after the frame refresh and it hasn't happened yet at the time you get to the next one. Well, you're using 0.98 millisecond old data. Okay. Now, in terms of if we wanted to find an intellectually honest way of calculating this whole thing, we would just average the maximum and minimum here. So this would be 0.5 milliseconds of like actual everyday delay for 1 millisecond. Don't worry. I know we're breaking out the math. The spreadsheet will do all of this for you. It'll make sense later. I promise. If your eyes are already glazing over at the math, those chapters down there, you can skip right ahead to the tool. Also, yes, I'm aware that Razer's fancy new motion sync stuff does even more than their previous ones. That has to do with the way they process the polling and reporting rates. That's beyond the scope of what we're talking about here. Okay. So then if we were to bump this up to, let's say, 8K, right? Let's just go all the way to the other side. So now instead of polling and reporting up to every 1 millisecond, we're now polling and reporting up to every 0.0125 milliseconds, which, on paper, that does sound like a lot, right? And it kind of is. Because again, if we were to take this total variance here, your maximum delay would be 0.125, your minimum delay would be 0, so it would be the average of that, so 6 point whatever, right? So now we're working with 0.06 milliseconds. So here's the thing. This is all on the hardware end, right? So this is talking about your mouse in a vacuum. And this is where a lot of people will try to give these like one size fits everybody advice about, oh, just set it to like 4K and you're fine. Or no, you paid for those hertz, use them. Okay, it is now spreadsheet time. Hang on, I promise it's not that bad, okay? So what we also need to consider when talking about total input latency, which is really why we all give a shit about the hertz and polling rate and refresh rate and all of that, right? A lot of things are also happening on your computer in the background, depending upon how tidy you are with your background processes, if you have Discord or whatever running. But we also have to recognize that the higher polling has a potential higher cost due to I'm going to get this wrong and people are going to correct me, the hardware interrupts on the CPU cycle. But the trick here is I don't think it's prudent to look just at the impact on your CPU, because CPUs do lots of stuff all the time, right? And if it can have an impact on your CPU, but you're not playing a CPU-limited game and it doesn't impact your FPS at all, well, who the fuck cares what the extra load on your CPU is? So what this tool does is it streamlines testing your specific hardware on your specific game. All of it will work for you. No, I can't just say, oh, hit it this. I mean, I could, but that kind of defeats the entire point of this. This is a Google Doc, so before you do anything else, you are going to want to, click File in the top left, then make a copy so that you have your own, because this version's locked. So with all the cells here, yes, there's a lot going on. A lot of it is basically just explanation or, showing you some of the back-end numbers. But really, you only have to worry about these 6 cells. So for any sort of accurate testing data, you need to have consistent baseline data and samples that work, okay? So what we're going to do is you're going to set your mouse to 1000 hertz. You can set it to lower than that if you want, but we're just going to use 1000 because it's common, right? And asking someone to set their mouse to 125 hertz might induce aneurysms. Once you have it set that way, you're going to hop in your game, run a quick benchmark, not just by letting the game run, not just by holding down one button on your keyboard. You do need to actually be moving the mouse around so that you are getting some active reporting and, resource cost being spent to process that reporting. The tricky bit here is that without some very expensive hardware, or more robotics than I care to jump into right now, we have to kind of deal with good enough, and I'm going to trust y'all to move your hand in approximately the same amount each time. So during that benchmark where you're moving your mouse, you're going to take both your average and your 1% low FPS. You can use something like Riva Tuner. The NVIDIA overlay does that now. There's lots of options. So once you have those numbers, you'll put your average FPS in C13, and you'll put your 1% lows in D13. Once you've done that, you're going to swap your mouse to your new desired polling rate. You just put in the new number here. For the sake of argument, we have it set to 8,000. You're going to run that test again. You're going to try to be as consistent as you were, move the mouse just about as much as you were before, and trust that you're getting close enough. Once again, after you have the average and 1% low FPS, you put those into C14 and D14, and it will do all of the rest of the math for you. You're welcome. So what are we looking at here, and why did I just ask you to run an FPS test? FPS also has an impact on your visual penalty and input lag, right? That's why we all try to get as many frames as we can by turning off as many of the shiny things as we can in most of the games we play. Yeah? So the way it would work is, let's say running your mouse at a higher hertz drops you a specific amount of FPS. Okay, well, now you've produced a deficit of input latency. Now, the question is, does the hertz setting that you've set make up for, exceed, not even get close to the penalty that you've incurred due to the FPS loss? This spreadsheet solves that for you. So if we wanted to run through another example here real quick, I'm going to go ahead and change this to 2000 just to see, for sake of illustration here. These were some of the numbers I had in BF6 a while ago. I chose BF6 just because it's a CPU limited game, and it would be easy to illustrate this, and it was already installed. So my average FPS on both of the sims was 220. My 1% lows went from 200 down to 180. So that's not a lot visually, but actually kind of a lot. So what we have here in the results column, in this top section here, this is your best case scenario results. This is when the poll and the report line up just before the frame, and it's the freshest data you can possibly have, okay? And then we have the average staleness reduction. So that's using those averages that we were doing before in Canva. And from here, you can make your own choices as to about whether you want to prioritize the average or you just want to shoot for the random potential bests. Just know that you're also going to be getting some random potential worsts too. All of these over here in brown, you really don't need to worry about. What you need to look at are these over here in purple. These cells will automatically change from green to red, depending upon whether you're at a net benefit or not. So in our case, if we go from 1K to 2K, we're seeing a best case scenario of 0.5 milliseconds of improvement, which, the math holds up, right? Which is also reflected down here in the average benefit section. Where it gets interesting, I think, is when we look at the 1% lows, because the 1% lows are going to be happening when we're taxing our CPU and GPUs more, or other things within the engine are happening. But similarly, I would argue those are taxing those pieces of hardware. Anyway, so if we understand that the higher reporting and polling rates have an impact on your CPU usage, it would make sense to check your current polling rate when it's being saturated. Not that it needs to be fully saturated, but when it's actively going higher from use, to compare and contrast that, or to correlate that rather, with your 1% lows. So by taking a look at the 1% lows and including that in all of the math here, you'll see what your actual net benefit is for your 1% lows. And here we see that, even if we went from 1K to 2K, we might actually be losing, not a lot, but still actually losing progress against, just leaving it at 1K based on these frames. Now, what gets interesting is when we try the other settings. So you might say, oh, 1K to 2K sucked, that was worse, but 4K is better. Yes, because math. The relationship of the multiples between 1 and 2 and 1 and 4 are strong enough that the benefit and latency reduction you get from the higher polling and reporting outweighs the cost from the FPS loss. And similarly, if you had a weird mouse that could do 6K, there you go. It'll do the math for you, or you could put it up to 8K. I am reasonably confident in all of this, but I am sure there are things that I have missed. Some of those things will have a significant, statistically speaking, impact on the data and math presented. Some of them won't. I am intellectually curious about the things that are statistically insignificant, but I'm actually interested in the things that I've likely missed here that are actually statistically significant. So if you have ideas and data and evidence and whatnot to back that up, please drop it in the comments. I'm happy to keep a pinned comment at the top with any corrections that come along. But for the time being, I don't know about y'all, but I'm just real fucking tired of all the clickbait YouTube videos. Here's a tool. Do your own math. Find out what works for you. I've been BaldSquid. I'll see you next time.